It's the L'Etape du Tour, stage one. So this is like the community race companion aspect of the Tour de France on Zwift. So first thing for this one, I knew the field was going to be huge. So you absolutely have to get in the pin really early. And to do that, first you got to sign up on the companion app right here. And then you got to click on the little clock in the bottom right, which is kind of inconspicuous. And that will take you to this set reminder page. So I set it for an hour today just to see if it would let me in an hour early. It did not, so then I set another reminder for 30 minutes. The key here is 30 minutes out, you got to be in Zwift already, loaded up, everything paired, riding around, and have your finger right over that join event in the bottom left. And as soon as it pops up, you click join event. That's how I got on this front row here, because I knew, you can see we got almost 2,000 people in the pin, still people joining at the last second. So I'll talk about my basic plan here. Part one of the plan is a hard start. I know that this is going to get real fast and strung out. So I want to start hard for at least the first minute or two to solidify a position. I don't want to be caught behind a split. And with this many people, literally thousands, everybody's populating on these piers, and a line of 2,000 riders, the difference between the front of the line and the back of the line can be minutes. So I don't want to be making up minutes here. I want to be starting ahead and then sliding back. So my plan is to start pretty hard for the first couple of minutes here, and then probably slide back once we hit the underwater little tunnel section. And from there, I'm just going to punch on the steep stuff. So there are two little steep ramps before we really hit the climb proper. Each of those I'll want to go pretty hard and then back my power off again on the flat parts. Even if that has me kind of sliding back a little bit, that's okay. I need to use those flat parts to get a little bit of respite. So this is all going to be a game of pacing. From there, the plan is pretty much like 280 watts should be kind of right below my threshold, and that's what I want to do up the Epic KOM, which is the longer climb of the day, but not the steeper climb. So the Epic KOM leads right into the radio tower climb, and the radio tower is, I believe it's the steepest climb on Zwift. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there, or maybe it just contains the steepest single grade on Zwift, but point is that it's very steep. So being a lighter rider like I am, I can probably make the most time up on that super steep grade. So I want to save a little bit for that. Also knowing a lot of these people, with this many people in the group, the people who sort of filter to the front at the beginning, there are going to be some who really can hold that pace, and I probably don't need to ride with them. But there are also going to be a lot of people who are riding out of, beyond what they can truly hold for that time period, because, it's like you see the carrot and you want to chase it. So there's always going to be those people who are riding just completely out of their skull, even though we're not halfway through the race. And my hope is that some of those people will blow up and I'll get some places back on the steep part. Regardless, I think pacing wise, to go a little bit more conservative on the longer one, and then the steeper, shorter one go real hard. That just fits my power profile. And it's also a smart strategy because really the group racing part, up until we get to those steep climbs, this is going to be an endless line of riders. Like you can see, it looks like I'm kind of losing wheels and gaining wheels here, but this is going to be a continuous line. So you're going to be drafting the whole way. You really just have to find what tempo is right for you and stick there. There's not a whole lot of advantage to being like farther forward or farther back. No matter what you do, you're going to be drafting. So that's fine. But once we get over the top of the radio tower, it's probably going to be broken down into groups. And it really doesn't matter what group you're in going up the Epic KOM. What's going to matter is the group you're in coming back down. So I want to put my biggest effort in and get as far forward as I can at the top of the Epic KOM. And then from there, I'll probably race it more like a normal road race where I'm trying to grab onto a group, maybe attack across if that looks promising, but get into a group and start racing a little bit more tactical. So like this first half is kind of an individual effort, and then that second part will be more group racing. So I'm going still pretty hard here. I want to stay in the top 100. I know if I get much farther back than that, I flip the camera around here just to check behind me, I think. I know if I get back much farther than that, it's going to be hard to find the front again, which I don't really expect to find the front, like first position, but I want to be, in contact with the other relatively strong people. So I'm going to talk about my own race in this video, but I also want to talk through just the Zwift Tour de France in general and what my thoughts and takeaways are from that. Watched both stages, stage 1 and stage 2. For some reason, L'Etape is like we only race every other stage for the community races, which is sort of annoying. I would like to do all 6, and it's also annoying that they don't do some sort of like virtual GC leaderboard. I know there's multiple times throughout the day, but I'd still like to see how my times stack up to all the other times. And, maybe if they did something like that, it would end up being like that USA Cycling Series where there were 3 times a day, but it was pretty much consensus that the strongest guys were doing the middle time. So, maybe some sort of consensus would form around like what is the real L'Etape, or what's the one that the fastest guys who are going to try to really push the pace in a big group. I don't know, but that's L'Etape du Tour. I want to talk about the actual virtual Tour de France. Stage 1 I thought was really, really interesting. If you watched my video where I took my first ride around the Champs-Élysées, I talked about how I thought Zwift was missing the boat a little bit not doing more points-based racing, because they can calculate points immediately, which is something you can't necessarily do in real life, and you certainly can't display in real life. I thought it made the racing a lot more interesting. I mean, there's a tendency on Zwift for things to become a blob. Okay, here we go up one of the steep ramps, so I want to hit it hard right here. I know this is going to be a crucial area, and I think I moved up pretty significantly right here because I figured, yeah, you can see some gaps starting to form. This is going to be the first part where it actually starts to matter how far forward you are. It's not just a continuous line. So yeah, I'm just going to settle into whatever. I'm trying to not really look at my power so much on these ramps. The steep ones, the steep short ones, I'm trying to just sort of do what feels right. So come into the bottom a little hot and then kind of back off and then hit it again over the top to make sure I get back up to speed. Yeah, stage 1 of the Tour de France, though, the actual virtual Tour de France, the pro race. That's a stage that we did not do for L'Etape, but it was the Watopia hilly route, which it's not. Hilly route is kind of a misnomer. It's not hilly compared to what's on Watopia now, but that was a route that was created early on in the game. That was before some of the bigger mountains existed, but it was a short route and it has a hill and a sprint, and what they did was offer points on the hill and the sprint each lap, and then there are also points at the finish. And those points were not just for individuals, they were for the team. So each team could sort of say, all right, on lap 1, Geraint Thomas, you go for the, KOM, and then whoever go for the sprint. Teams could sort of like devise their strategy and like burn a rider in a specific place at a specific time and try to maximize their points. Like it seemed like rally cycling was all in for the GC positions. They weren't going for the sprints so much, and there were other teams that were going for the sprints and not the GC. And it made it where there was constant action the whole time. There's the feature's the wrong word. There's a function on Zwift that the drafting sort of makes everything into a blob, and you don't really get breakaways the way you do in real life. So having like multiple finish lines and multiple places to get points creates incentives for people to be attacking at different times, different people to be attacking at different times. And like, even if you're not one of the ones who's maybe attacking over the KOM points, it forces you to go hard to stay on and sort of changes your calculus. And then when it's your turn, maybe that person who went for that hard KOM comes off the back, and it just made the racing really dynamic and fun to watch. So I thought that was a huge win. It was awesome to watch. I would love to do more racing like that. And I know there is some like points racing on Zwift, but I think the team aspect makes it more interesting. Where I think Zwift missed the mark on that a little bit is they didn't have heads up, like instant visualization for what those points are. And that would be a little bit different on the user side. Like if you were doing a heads up visualization for like me as a racer, when I come across the line, I want to see how many points I got, and then I want to see where I'm at on the leaderboard, and I want it to be centered on me. But it would be helpful, and they were showing those classifications sometimes, but it was kind of like watching the normal tour where you're like, what is the time gap? And like every now and again, they'll kind of randomly show the graphic you want to see. So it would be interesting if they created some sort of, and maybe this is all coming in the new UX. I know they're working on a new user experience for Zwift. So they've been threatening that for a long time, and I think that maybe coronavirus, you would think that might speed it up, but I think it actually slowed it down a bit because they are afraid to break something while there's so many people on the platform. So getting back to my race here, across that bridge I was trying to back off, and I knew I was sliding back a few positions, but as long as someone is sliding around me the whole time and I'm staying in the draft, I really just wanted to take that opportunity to kind of get a little rest, get my heart rate down a little bit, because the goal for this climb is to sort of stick it between like 275 and 300 somewhere the whole time. So that's my range. I'm not keeping my eyes on the power just like all the time, but I'm trying to glance at it, and if I'm low, bump it down, or low, bump it up, and if I'm high, bump it down. And I want to concentrate on my own pacing more than anyone else, really, because with this many people, there's always going to be someone that you think like, oh, I could get to that guy, I could get to that guy. And I know right now, like, this is 6%. I could blow myself up on this 6% if I look at that line ahead of me and say, I want to get to the next group, I want to get to the next group, I want to, and just keep doing that. I could blow myself up on this 6-7%, and then when we get to the 13-14, I'm totally spent. And if you're spent on that 13-14, you're going to lose a lot more time there than you're going to lose being conservative here. So that's my pacing strategy, and I'm kind of sticking to it. Getting back to the pro race, so that was stage one. I thought stage one of the pro race was awesome. Stage two was this course that we're doing here, and it's interesting because I feel like everyone associates the Tour de France with these big mountain climbs, and that's sort of what people think is going to be exciting, but it's kind of different on Zwift. I mean, I enjoyed watching the stage today, and I was excited to race the same course or whatever. It's cool that, you know, they added all these little yellow elements, and you can hear the honking horn right now. A lot of this stuff was added specifically for the Tour de France. Oh yeah, you'll also notice I'm riding a yellow frame here. They did put us all in the same frame, which I thought was interesting. I don't know, wonder how much Trek paid them to do that, but it kind of makes it more fair, I guess. I don't know. Part of what I like about Zwift is that there's all these different gear options and you can change, but they actually didn't make everyone use the same wheels though. So I am on the lightweight brand wheels that you win. They're the lightest wheels in the game, and that's a little bit of like gamification edge I got. But yeah, all these banners are really cool. This is all specifically for the tour. You got Trek and Rafa, and it's a nice little touch. It kind of adds some flair, because this is a route I've ridden before. This is the Epic KOM is what it's called. I think this was the first big climb they built on Zwift before Alpe du Zwift and before the new one, Mont Ventoux, which is not out yet, but I have a video about it. I'll put the link at the end. Have gotten in there and ridden it. So I got the ice sock on my back, trying to cool off here. Keeping cool is going to be very, very important. You see a guy saying to flag the front group in the chat. That's another thing. I'm trying to not let myself be too worried about others through here and just do my own pacing, because especially in a big like mass participation event like this, you're gonna get some people who are accidentally cheating because they're on like miscalibrated or just bad equipment, like they're on a dumb trainer and they're using a speed sensor, which is really easy to accidentally miscalibrate. And even if you calibrated it correctly, it's not it's not a power meter, so it's not an accurate measure of what your power is. And a lot of those people are going to get filtered out by the results on ZwiftPower.com. So I'm not trying to be too worried about them. Right here, I'm adjusting. I've got one of those little Cyclops brand, one of those like sweat covers, and I'm sort of adjusting that to cover a little bit more of my companion app as I start to sweat on my tablet. I have a tablet on my bars with the companion app on it. It makes it a little bit easier to deploy power-ups. And sometimes it makes it, especially on a climb like this, a little easier if I look at my power on the companion app rather than getting in my head about these guys that are just passing me right here. Again, I keep having to tell myself, like, here comes this guy. I don't need to surge to stick his wheel. I need to stay within myself and stay on my own pace. It's hard, but I got to do it, especially on this little 5% right here. This is one of the least steep parts of this climb. So if I'm going to get any rest, I need to do it right here. I have my trainer difficulty on 50% here. I figured that is the default on Zwift, so that's probably what most people are going to have. I generally race anywhere between 40 to 60% on my trainer difficulty. And really what that does is keeps me from having to shift the front chainring. And I don't know if you've ever tried to shift your front chainring and dropped the chain while riding the trainer and smashed your knees into the bars, but it's not a good feeling. So I just keep it on 40 to 60 when I'm racing. Generally, if I'm just riding around, I'll go up to 100%. I like that because it keeps my mind a little bit more engaged when I'm riding by myself or just riding around, not doing a race. I'm probably not going to be sprinting and making those big accelerations to try and grab onto groups and stuff, the kind of stuff where I might throw the chain. So I'm still feeling the gradients. I actually think people are always saying that it's some sort of advantage to race on 0%, but I actually think, especially on a course like this, racing on 100 would be a little bit tough just because of how much you're going to have to change the gears to pace it perfectly. But I think it's not going to be, physiologically, it's not a disadvantage. You can do the same watts regardless. I don't want to get on this high horse, but also I don't think racing on 0 is going to make you race any better. There are several spots, and I'll point them out later in the race here, even on this, going up this climb, but especially coming down, where the gradient changes from a downhill to an uphill in a pretty sharp way. And if you're not on a smart trainer, it's easy to be spinning easy and you don't feel it, so you don't get back on top of that gear. And those little ramps will cause you to come to a stop. And some of the guys who are running a more realistic trainer difficulty, even if they're not paying attention, they're just naturally going to feel that gradient, try to keep their cadence about the same, and they're going to accelerate away from you. So you got to, if you're on a dumb trainer or you have your trainer difficulty at 0, you have to almost just be watching that top right hand corner with the gradient in it and be like proactively shifting so that you don't get left behind on those steeper grades. And I think it's also really easy to when it tilts down and your trainer would have let up a little bit, to stay on the gas too hard and waste watts, because a lot of times on the downhill, pedaling, going from 2 watts a kilo to 3 watts a kilo, that's a big difference in terms of how much rest you're getting, but it's not going to be a big difference in terms of how fast you're going down the descent, especially if you're in the group. That might be the difference of hanging on to the back of the group to being the one pulling on the front of the group. But you're going to come to the bottom of that, depending on how big the group is and all those factors, you're probably going to come to the bottom of that descent at the same time with the same people. So I don't know. I think 0 trainer difficulty, I think it might be a little bit of a myth that that's like the ultimate way to go. I don't know. Maybe all these people who are beating me, they're on 0 trainer difficulty. I don't know. You'll see I'm spinning kind of a high cadence right here. I'm running an 11:28 cassette today. I figured I would probably need the gears, and then I got a 53:39 up front. I'm really just staying in that 53 as much as I possibly can, though. So we got people coming by me here, and I'm trying to not let that get in my head, which is really hard to do. I'm still 43rd out of 2,000 something. I think at the end of the, on the companion app after, it was actually almost 3,000. I think there were a lot of people who signed up late. So maybe that 2,000 number is how many people actually signed up and got out of the pen at the same time as me. So this stage did not have like the multiple lap points format. It still did have the KOM points going into the same bucket as yesterday, and I'm not actually sure if there was a sprint, but if there was, it was going into the same bucket, and the finish points are the same way. So everyone across the line, I think back to 50th, scores points for their team, and that's actually how the GC is calculated rather than overall time, which I think is smart for Zwift because it's going to make everyone race a little bit more aggressively rather than just knowing that the blob's going to keep everyone together and you're not going to get big time gaps. The best thing I'll say, or my favorite thing from the stage today, was watching Mike Woods from EF Education First, watching him get back out there and really have a good showing. I knew this would be a good climb for him. He's an ex-runner, and so something that's really steep is normally pretty good for him. He can get into more of like a running cadence and really stomp on the pedals. He's also really light. So this, especially the radio tower section, not so much the section we're on right now, where it's kind of a low grade, but the radio tower section especially, and because of this low grade, that's why I'm trying to get just up to one of these guys so maybe I can cop a little draft before it tilts back up too hard. I know that there's a couple little downhills through here, so this is a spot where I am going to sort of forego my pacing plan a little bit because I want a draft. But yeah, Mike Woods was racing really aggressively, and I like Mike Woods in general, but especially coming off of, he had a terrible crash in Paris-Nice, one of the few races that actually went off this year. So I was kind of surprised to see him on the start list even. I know he broke all kinds of stuff in his leg. I mean, his leg was like flopping around, didn't have bones in it. Yeah, so that surge was to get up to one of these groups because it's about to tilt. See, now we're on a downhill, so I want to be with somebody, preferably somebody who's pushing pretty hard here, to save a little. You can see I'm doing 122 watts here. That's exactly what I want to be doing, is saving a little bit while it's downhill and while it's flat, because we're coming into the steepest part before too long. But yeah, Mike Woods was all over the front through this whole climb, but especially on the radio tower, he really came to the front and ripped it apart. He didn't end up winning the stage, but he had a really good kick at the end. And to come from, crashing horrifically in one of the only real life races that happened this year to, it's the virtual Tour de France, but it was all World Tour riders. And I honestly, maybe there's a few guys who aren't taking it seriously. Maybe that's why people get dropped, but these are all super talented riders, and it's, over 100 of the world's best cyclists. So to be at the front of that race, there's no easy way to do it. So hats off to him. And it was really exciting to watch him sort of make the race from the front, make all the surges, and race aggressively. This little section is really interesting. I've never raced on this course before, but I've ridden it, and I knew that these little rolling punches right here, a lot of people are not going to race those optimally. So you can really let off on those downhills and then really punch hard on those uphills and carry a lot more speed. And that's sort of my strategy. But now we got a good little rolling group here of 5-ish, and I want to, unless someone tries to start ripping it, which there are going to be a lot of people who are still big ego time, maybe not realizing the radio tower is coming up, or maybe they want to get to this KOM quickly for some reason. So this is a weird scenario where we're still technically on the epic KOM, even though we've had those little downhill sections and we're on 1% right now. This whole thing is still quote unquote the epic KOM, and the KOM banner is actually up here before you hit the radio tower. So the radio tower, it's listed in some places as the quote unquote bonus climb. So it's kind of just like a crazy little side climb. It's funny because we have a climb almost exactly like this, really close to my house. I did almost all of Rafa Rising on this climb one year. It's like this in that it's a bonus climb that goes up to a radio tower where it's part of a greater loop where you can do a lot of climbing that is a part of the circular loop, but this little radio tower is like an out and back. So you have to add it on just like while you're there, turn, go up the radio tower, come back down the radio tower, and then you're on the main loop again. And that's how this climb works is you're doing the Epic KOM, and if you just go straight after the Epic KOM banner, you'll continue a loop. But if you take the turn, you go up the road to the radio tower and then come back down the same road, and then you're back on the loop. And ours actually also goes up to a radio tower and a water tower. I used to live on that climb, and a couple of years ago I did the Rafa Rising challenge on Strava, almost all on that climb, because I could do stuff like put some toast in the toaster, go do a couple of repeats of the climb. Each one probably took like 15 minutes, come back, pull the toast out and eat it, refill my bottles, keep going. It's kind of nice to have like a home base on the climb I was doing. But it's not quite as steep as this one, but it is like 10% paved climb, little access road type thing. So interesting analog to real life for me. But mine is not quite as snowy and scenic as this. Speaking of the scenery and stuff, I heard a lot of problems with people having Zwift crash on them in this event, and it makes sense because your computer is trying to draw so many people on screen, and there's so much happening and there's so much data. It was crashing a lot of people's systems. So for this, to make sure I got a smooth video, I actually backed it down to a lower setting. All my settings are a little lower, and I actually like how it looks. I think it came out pretty good. So maybe I'll stay here. I think it maybe squeezes a few more FPS out because it's not trying to do so much graphically, and like the difference in the textures and stuff I think is nominal, but I think when you get a higher frame rate, you get a better sense of the speed and stuff. So I'm trying to stick this guy's wheel right here because I know this is another spot where I'm going to get a little respite before it goes back down. This guy's coming through, and I'm going to do a little surge just to try and stay with him maybe. And then hopefully I can get some rest before we hit the steep part. So that was the Epic KOM banner, and you can see like dead ahead right there, that is the radio tower where we're going. So if we stayed on the Epic KOM like normal loop, we would be on the descent right now. We would just continue straight, but we're going to take a left right here and head up, checking behind to see if there's anyone else coming behind that I should maybe sit up and get with them, or if this is my group. And it looks like this is my group. Got a good little rest there under 200 watts, and I'm ready to smash. And I also want to hit it hard here and carry some of this 57 kilometers per hour, sorry. I want to carry that speed, so my plan, I had that featherweight power up, which is perfect. Deploy the featherweight, because I know it gets 13% here, super steep, and simultaneously hit a huge effort. I wanted to, in my mind, kind of average about like 350 from the base of the little kicker we just hit all the way up to the tower. I didn't know that I was going to be in that small group, and that I was going to have a feather I wanted to make the most of. So I kind of paced this first part a little harder, and then from the turn a little bit easier, but still want to be like between 300 and 350 the rest of this way. I went way over 350 there early, but the longer I could carry that speed, the better. Even in this virtual world, inertia is a really important thing, and that's going to come into play actually a lot when we turn back around. But you can see I picked up a lot of those places that I lost early on. I'm picking them up again. I think I went up, 20 places just in the last like couple minutes. And so it seems like my pacing strategy is paying off here. I wanted to save a little bit for this climb, and then this is where I was really going to lay it all down. So heart rate's creeping up. Seems like low 180s has been kind of my max heart rate recently. We'll see. I don't actually know how high my heart rate got here. I wasn't watching it. So I wonder if I got into the 180s at any point here. I know this felt super hard, and you can see I'm getting close down to 300 and having to mentally tell myself, like, all right, I'm hitting the lower limits of what I told myself was acceptable. So pick it up, Jonathan. Keep going. And it is helpful that I'm still picking people off, still picking places up. I think this is the steepest grade on Zwift. Someone tell me if I'm wrong, but we hit 16% there for a second. I think that is the steepest grade on Zwift. So even with my trainer on about 50% difficulty, really feeling the resistance here, which is good. You want to know, again, I want to know when the difficulty, when this grade gets really steep, it's going to be more advantageous for me to put down more watts there and less where it's not as steep. So I want to feel that resistance. I also like being able to stand up and churn watts out on the steep stuff. And when you're working against the resistance and you can kind of stand on the pedals, I didn't see any at-home shots of Mike Woods. They were talking a big game, getting back to the virtual Tour de France, like pro race. They were talking a big game about having all the pros with like at-home cameras where we could see them. And they did cut to several of them, which was awesome. It's cool to see those guys like trainer setups and all. Here I go standing up. This is like what I was saying. I like to work against that resistance and feel it where I can stand against the pedals and it doesn't just bottom out on me. But I didn't see any shots of Mike Woods at home, despite the fact that he was way up there. I would love to have seen it, but I would imagine that this was what he's doing because as a former runner, he gets into that even lower cadence than this, like 70 RPM kind of churning cadence, and he's really, really good at that. So I kind of had him picked. Once I saw him on the start line, I was like, oh, it's interesting that he's going to be racing and he's back from his big peroneus injury. So immediately I kind of keyed into him when I saw him make the front group. And here's a fun thing to do when you're watching the virtual Tour de France. So if you go on the companion app before, ahead of time, you can actually see the virtual Tour de France as an event. It's not available for you to sign up for because it's a private event, but it is on there. So you can click on that, look at the start list, and you can actually see the Zwift profiles of all of the pros that are signed up, and you can follow them. So I did that yesterday. It hadn't even struck me, but I happened to notice the event was on there and went through and followed a bunch of pros. So then today while I was watching the race, I had the companion app open and I could actually sit there and give someone a ride on in the companion app and see it pop up like the guy in front of me just got that yellow ride on. So that was pretty fun. Whenever somebody did something I thought was cool, or just when it was a single shot of someone, it's fun to just like pop that thumbs up button and see it plop down on NBC Sports Gold or something, which I'll talk about that in a second. But right here, I know we got these two guys. I want to coalesce this into a group of three. I think, this is where it turns into a normal road race. I want to be in a group. I want to be saving watts, sucking wheels, and trading turns with some guys and get a good pace going, because hopefully we can start picking up some of these riders who maybe gutted themselves on the climb, but they're kind of in no man's land now. We can start just slowly picking them off, and the more guys we have together, the easier that is going to be to do. So I definitely want to grab a wheel. That one guy, it looks like he wanted to venture into no man's land here, which is fine with me. So I just want to grab a wheel and see. I checked behind me there to see, and there's not really anybody coming up. So I'm going to super tuck. And this is one of the steepest climbs, so it's also one of the steepest descents. And if you don't know, if you stop pedaling on Zwift and you're going over 57 miles an hour and the grade is more than 3% downhill, you can get into this position that I guess Froome didn't originate it, but he definitely made it famous, sitting on the top tube descending. And he actually did that attack in the Tour where he was sitting on the top tube and pedaling. You don't pedal in the position, but it is really fast on Zwift to do that. But here we go. There's one of these little kickers, and I'm just going to step on the power up over the top and stay on it for a second until we tilt back down. And it makes me go a lot faster. Definitely helps my overall speed. And that's going to be my plan all the way down this descent since I've kind of lost everybody. I'm going to keep doing that and see if I can't pick up a group. If I don't pick up a group from ahead of me, don't latch onto a group ahead, then I might sit up at the bottom and try and pick up a group from behind me. But what I really don't want to do here is just slog away solo from here to the finish and have nothing left and then get completely rolled, because coming into the finish, there's a sort of rolling, punchy little section where a group that's rolling really fast can be hard to latch onto as they come over the top of you if they have more speed. So I would like to get into a group and ride more efficiently. And a lot of people are going to say that, like, oh, that's, you got to go 100% to the finish. That's dumb. That's not good racing. Part of racing is tactics and knowing the course, knowing where to put your effort down. And frankly, that's why I'm not the strongest guy out here. And a lot of the races I've even won, I'm not the strongest guy. But strategy is a big part of bike racing, and it is still a big part of Zwift. It's maybe slightly different strategy than it would be in real life. I think right here, because I'm not seeing anybody, I'm checking the time gaps, and then I want to make sure that my internet's not out. Again, we got a little kicker here, and this one's a little bit bigger, so I'm going to put down a real big effort. You see it's 10% back up this hill, so I want to hold on to that speed I had. And because it's so short, I was going 50K an hour up that 10% part. If you're not paying attention and you get caught out right there, it could take you 2 or 3 times as long to get over that little knuckle if you're not really pushing. And I cut the gap down to the guy in front of me significantly right there. But the fact that I'm not seeing him and the gap was at 7 seconds, I think I got a little bit concerned right here, like, oh no, maybe my internet is cut out, which it hasn't, because when your internet cuts out, so on Zwift, if your internet cuts out, all of the other people go away and you're just riding in a universe by yourself. But what else happens is you're not going to get the little chat messages like the one that just popped up. You don't have the 23 out of however many, and then you don't have this whole list of people in time gaps. So I clicked on the guy ahead of me right here just to glance and see where exactly he was, because I knew that I was super tucking here and I didn't need to be watching myself. There wasn't much to watch. That's something that rarely comes in handy in races, but it is kind of cool that you can do that. You can click on someone else and watch them. So I saw that this group behind was coming up on me and flipped the camera around to make sure that I could see them and kick as they come over the top. And again, kick to make sure I get on this little uphill before the down. I want to get into the group and maybe pop a little bit more of a super tuck. But this bodes really well, the fact that I've got this little working group now. This is perfect, exactly what I wanted to happen. I want to find a group before it flattens out, and we're getting real close to the bottom here. There's a couple more of these little, you can see one coming up right now, a little like ski jump style, big downhill with a little uphill kicker. And again, 445 watts there for a second. Just got to keep it fast over the top of these guys. And so that guy that we just passed, I think we just completely, just like 100% dropped him, just blew right past him because he was sleeping. He wasn't punching on those little uphills, and the group came past him with speed. That's exactly what I was talking about. The thing that could happen, especially on the final section of this course coming into the finish, if a big group sort of coalesced on the flats and I was just pushing 5 watts a kilo by myself on the flat, I would probably get rolled by them and not even be able to catch on. So I've avoided that scenario. This is exactly what I want. We got a group. We got 5 guys. Everyone seems pretty motivated. No one is doing stupid attacks, but everybody's pushing the pace pretty good. So I'm hoping we're going to keep picking people up. Moving back over to talking about the pro race, I think Zwift really missed an opportunity to show off the platform by not having a time trial. And I know that sounds insane because the time trial, while it is very important in a GC format, GC is the overall time. And in a GC format race like the Tour de France, where it's run on overall time combined of every stage throughout the day, I realize I should be explaining some of this stuff probably, since there are probably people who Zwift who don't know exactly how the Tour de France works. Your total time, like if you do 1 minute on stage 1 and 1 minute on stage 2, you got 2 minutes. Your overall time for each stage is added together every day. The time trial is a race where everyone sets off individually and is timed, and it's very important because there are time gaps that form in the time trial that maybe don't in a bunch race, because everyone is drafting and it's a little bit harder to get away from people. So there are big time gaps in the mountains, but the time trial is often crucial in separating all of the main contenders, because if you have a time trial where everyone's riding individually and they're pacing differently, they're going to come out, everyone's going to have little time gaps. So if everyone gets the same time on multiple stages, those time gaps from the time trial become really important. Having said all that, a time trial is very boring to watch. Watching a time trial on TV can be like watching paint dry a lot of times, because you're watching individual riders who have you have nothing to base it on. So you just watch until they tell you what a time split is. Time split meaning like he came through the halfway point of the course faster than the other guy or whatever. And it looks like we're picking up a couple guys here, so plan's working. Just sit in this group, keep picking people off. So a time trial in a real stage race is very important. It's a indispensable part of the actual racing of a Grand Tour, but it's super boring to watch. I think Zwift really has an opportunity here to show off the platform, because they have a heads-up time trial format, a mass start time trial format, where you do a time trial, but instead of each rider setting off individually and then just riding alone the whole time, you can have everyone set off at the exact same time, and you just turn the drafting off. And what that does is allow everyone to ride a time trial exactly as they would. They're not getting any advantage off of the pack, so it neutralizes, the same reason you have a time trial in real life. But it's a lot more fun to watch, and it's a lot more dynamic, because you're going to see some guys who get their pacing wrong and they blow up because, Zwift races always start too hard. And when you see that guy in front of you, you think, oh, I can get there. Like I was talking about on that first climb, but you're not getting any draft off of them. And it can be really interesting to watch a heads-up time trial. And that's something that Zwift needs to do, and it seems like something they're trying to do, is to say we're not just trying to replicate outdoor racing. We are trying to do things that are different, that are unique. You're still pedaling a bike, but we're going to give you some sort of experience that you couldn't get outside. And I think that's why Zwift has the power-ups. I think that's why boost mode is something they're testing. They want to offer you a race experience that's not just simulating outdoors. Now, I'll say, if you want to go watch all my RGT videos, I think RGT is trying to be more of a simulation of outdoor riding. So if that's what you're looking for, I think RGT is where you go for that. And Zwift is more in this game side. But if that's what Zwift is trying to do, they're really missing an opportunity to show a huge feature their platform has. And the time trials are one of the most popular forms of racing for not necessarily individual time trials, but the WTRL, the team time trials, are super popular. And you could even do like a heads-up team time trial on here. Time trialing on Zwift is one of the, I think, killer apps of the system. I did my first individual time trial not too long ago as an accident, but I ended up really enjoying it and liking the format so much more. I hate time trialing outside. One of the things I like about racing is having people around me and thinking about the strategy and all that kind of stuff. And when you are time trialing and you can see everyone else in real time, it's possible to understand where you're better and where they're better and where you're picking up time and whose pacing strategy is working and who's not and who's blowing up. And it just makes it a lot more interesting because you have people to watch the whole time. Maybe I'll throw that video as a link at the end along with my my Mont Ventoux ascent. Those will be the two videos and the final card. I was wondering what that water sound was. It's super loud. I guess it was the the little waterfall we just passed there. It's funny the things I don't totally pick up on when I have my really loud fan going on in the room, like the sound of these cobbles and the sound of the waterfall. But that was actually in stereo. Like I heard it go past my head as it panned one ear to the other. That's pretty cool. But yeah, we're picking up people, and this group has sort of formed. This is exactly what I wanted to happen. Now my goal is to just kind of stay in the middle of this group. I'm hoping that people don't start just attacking this group, because they're probably not going to get away. It's just going to make us all go slower. My hope is we're going to keep it tight and keep it fast and roll hard the rest of the way, all the way in. But we'll see. Regardless, my goal is to kind of stay in the middle of the group. That way, if it speeds up and catches me out, there's a couple of guys that'll filter around me while I do the acceleration, and I'm not going to be caught out of the slipstream, and I'm also not getting stuck on the front if someone takes their foot off the gas, so to speak. Interesting that the other guy used his truck power up there. That kind of tells me that at least somebody is hurting a little bit. And here go these other guys using their feather power-ups. This is another, again, a spot where there's a little kicker, so I want to make sure I put some watts down to stay on. From here in, it's kind of just like this until we get back to the pier, boardwalk, beach area. There are just these little ups and little downs, and this is where I was imagining, like, the worst case scenario would be everything from the climb to here I just hammer by myself and completely wear myself out, still get caught by a big group regardless, but the big group comes from behind and just flies past me on this descent and I can't get back on. And that's coming from experience. It's really, really easy to get dropped in this section, which I think makes it really fun to race. It's super dynamic. There's all these turns, so it's easy to get kind of like out of sight, out of mind, as in real life. If you can get to where people can't see you, it's harder for them to stay motivated to chase you. But this is a really fun section to race. But I do know I have to be super mindful here. Like, I just came across that little gap. Somebody might have done it for me if I let them, but we're too close to the finish now. And I'm also looking at potentially top 20 finish, which, top 1% of the field. I really had no idea how well I was going to be able to do here in terms of like what number finishing position I was going to have. I also have no idea like how many of these people are on Zwift power, because as we all know, Zwift power is the real results. It's going to filter out a lot of the cheaters, accidental and intentional. But regardless, I want to do as well as I can. But it is kind of tantalizing that I'm in the teens now out of 2,000 some odd people. I think it ended up even being more than what it's showing on the counter now in the app. But still, top 10% is pretty solid. So now we are into the final like sprint portion here, and I'm sort of calculating my plan. And the thing is, the truck is not going to help me much in the sprint once I get past everybody. So I actually want to deploy the truck a little early. I'm probably going to deploy the truck now on the back of the group, get a little rest, and then when we hit point 3, 300 meters out, that's where I hit it. So I've got that truck saving me a little bit as I move through the group, full sprint, front of the group, and now I just got to hold it. And boom, field sprint 1, 15th place. Almost picked up 14th there. I'll throw that mass start time trial video right here. I'll also put up the Mont Ventoux preview video I've got, so you guys can see that before we race it. I guess that'll be stage 3 of L'Etape. Anybody agree or disagree about the virtual tour? Are you guys watching it? Do you care? Let me know in the comments what you think about it. And be on the lookout for my Mont Ventoux RGT versus Mont Ventoux Zwift comparison later this week. Later, y'all. Thanks.